today on the Bioanxiety podcast, we have the awesome Nicole, who is a licensed family and marriage therapist.
Marriage and family therapist.
Marriage and family therapist.
All the same.
And she is going to talk to us a little bit about what she does and then give us some tips on how you can help somebody you love or somebody in your circle who suffers from anxiety really badly. I'm going to let you take over because it's your story.
Thank you. Yes, so excited to be here. So a little bit about me. I am a therapist. I work in Manhattan, and my biggest sort of passion point is to work with couples, but I also do a lot of work with individuals around chronic illness and just sort of like transitions of life, and wide spectrum of clients and just, what they're sort of going through in their life. And my desire to do this work basically came from, what's the short version of the story as to how I got into this field? So part of why I got into this work was because I'm just really passionate about helping people, and I love love, and so for me, doing couples work, helping them find themselves and just sort of return to one another has just been beautiful to watch, and also just for individuals, like just seeing moments where they better understand themselves, they have they have a newfound sense of like confidence, and that they feel empowered in whatever it is that they're doing. It just is such a rewarding experience. And so I'm really grateful for what I do, that people allow me to be a part of their lives this way. And and so that's, I guess, a little bit about me and what I've been doing for maybe the last 7-8 years of my life so far. So yeah.
That's amazing. So can I ask, like, what's the one, have you noticed that there's like one specific thing as to why couples maybe start drifting apart or?
So at a high level, I mean, there are so many reasons, but I think what it often really comes down to is communication and just a sense of like understanding that often gets lost in translation or just gets lost between two people. And then there starts to be this wedge that creates distance. And oftentimes that's what they come back into, that's what they come back to fight for, right? It's the closeness, the sense of connection that they once had that they now no longer have. And then hopefully we help them find that. Many times we do, and they learn a lot about themselves and one another in the process, which is always just beautiful to watch.
I think that's really amazing, because I feel like in this day and age, so many people just give up, with like dating apps and things like that. I feel, it's like, oh, it's not going to work out with this one person. Oh, well, I can just go on another dating app and swipe and then find somebody else, which is horrendous, in my opinion. I actually wrote a paper about that in school and got an A.
Did you?
Because my teacher could relate to it so much. She was like,
so many people.
So I know you help a lot of people with anxiety as well, right? We all have it.
Yes.
What, like, from a therapist's point of view, like, what is anxiety in general? Like, what causes it, and how has it evolved over time?
Great question. Okay, so where to begin? High level, anxiety is the body's biological stress response, right? Stress response specifically as it relates to a threat. The threat could be perceived or it could be real, right? But it doesn't matter, right? Anxiety is the body's biological response to threat. And it's mainly driven by our amygdala. Amygdala is just like, I call it the emotional powerhouse of our brain. And it has the ability, when it detects threat of any sort, to send your body into fight, flight, or freeze. Essentially what that means is it activates your body to either move towards the threat and fight it, move away from the threat and escape it or to hide from it, right? So one of the three is your body's response to when it detects something that is in your environment that supposedly will harm you. And these things can be, again, I said perceived or real, right? So real things like, okay, if, I don't know, if I touch the third rail of the subway system, right? Like I know that that is a real threat because I will get electrocuted. So I probably shouldn't do that if I want to keep myself safe. Perceived is, I think, where more of the work comes, where my work with clients shows up, because it's so specific to your lived experience, right? My lived experience, your lived experience, two different worlds. What you've endured, what you have emotionally experienced, what you have physically lived through, and what your body has coded as a threat is very different than for mine. Maybe there are elements that overlap, but a lot of times they're very specific to people. And that is where, when clients come to me and they say, I'm just feeling so anxious. Anxiety could be about anything, right? It's like, okay, let's understand. Let's understand what it is about. Because in today's day and age, the threats that we have are very different than the threats that, like, evolutionarily our body evolved from, right? So if we think back hundreds of years, what did we as evolving species code as a threat? Probably something like a bear, right? If we saw a bear in our surroundings, that animal was potentially problematic for us and our livelihood. And so our system basically evolved in a way that if we saw that bear back then, we would either gather our tribe and we would fight it and we would kill it and therefore protect ourselves, or we would get ready to run from it or outrun it and keep ourselves safe in that way, or we would hide in our surroundings until it moved on, right, and no longer saw us, and therefore we then remained safe. But today, we don't have bears chasing us, right? Like, that we know of, yes. The occasional dog, but, generally speaking, we don't have bears anymore. But our body's response and the response mechanism has gone unchanged, right? Threats have varied, mechanism and response, same as hundreds of years ago. So in today's day and age, right, like just thinking about, let's say, the idea of work anxiety, people might feel anxious about getting a job, applying for it, whether that's like, am I the right fit? Could I do this? Is someone going to actually pick me for this position? Will I be liked? Will I get the promotion, right? Like, these are elements of our anxiety present day that we might experience or that consume our minds. But at the base of it all, it's still survival, right? The survival just looks very different. In other words, if I get the job or not, well, my financial security depends on it. Can I care for myself? Can I care for my loved ones? The idea of, what did I say? Like, am I liked, right? Do I have a sense of community around me? Mm-hmm. Do I have a sense of support? Or do I feel like I'm just walking around completely alone in the world, right? Like, we are creatures who need to be part of something bigger. Mm-hmm. So a sense of community is vital to our existence, right? And so whether it's the financial piece or money that in today's day and age feels important to our survival, or a sense of community, these are like the new ways that anxiety shows up, and that oftentimes really cause people to panic a little bit, right? Because it's like, wow, when you sit with emotions like that, like, they are uncomfortable, right? I think everyone has experienced some sense of anxiety and knows what it feels like.
Yeah, I can definitely relate with that.
Yeah. So like, what if we run with that for a second, right? So what if I had you think about the most recent time that you noticed yourself feeling anxious? What do you remember feeling and it's just like experiencing inside your body in that moment?
For me, honestly, like my face starts to tingle.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing I feel the most, and my chest starts to like close a little bit, and I feel like my blood pressure is going up slightly.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how anxiety like hits me personally.
So universal what you experience, right? There are probably many people when they listen to this that are like, yeah, me too, right? And then some, right? For instance, heart rate increasing, breathing getting faster, hands getting clammy, or maybe you're getting hot or sweaty. Maybe your clarity of like thinking starts to feel off in a way that's like, what's going on? Why am I not quite, like as sharp as I felt? Or your tummy starts to get uncomfortable. These are all the body's biological responses to threat. In other words, you then know anxiety is like coursing through your veins. For some of us, we get little hits of it. For others, we get flooded to the extent of like worst case scenario, panic attacks, right? Least case scenario are like, most manageable. Ooh, I feel a little, and then, that is so normal because what is happening in that moment is your body is anticipating you got to do something. Something's coming your way. What are we going to do to respond? Right. So like elevated heart rate, like sweating, it's a signal to be like run, fight, or hide. Right. And yet for some of us, that response in the current moment feels completely disconnected with what the threat actually is. Right. So like it might not be that big of a deal. And yet we're noticing our body having a major response. And a lot of times it's really uncomfortable, right? Like, to the point where we're like, make it stop. Like, I don't want to live like this. And for people who have more heightened amygdala activity and they experience that 10, 20 times a day, like that just gets exhausting. Right? Emotionally exhausting for your body to keep going through that sort of process. Like at many times, clients will say to me, like, it's unsustainable.
Yeah.
Like, I do not want to continue to move through life this way. What do we do? What do we do? And I'm like, okay, yeah, what do we do? So like, first place that I tend to start is somatic exercises. Somatic exercises is just essentially like, it comes down to breath work. Breath work is so powerful and it oftentimes is perceived as being too simple to be the solution because they're like, well, what is breathing going to do? Well, physiologically speaking, breathing does a whole lot of stuff, right? So breathing, it helps our system re-enter a place of calm. In other words, it does try to, like breathwork, not does try, breathwork does activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest part of our bodies, which is the counterbalance to the fight, flight, freeze response. And so when we breathe and we basically pace our breathing in a way that helps to like slow our heart rate and like bring our body into a sense of calm, we are challenging our body's initial response to like get up and do or fight or move or escape or freeze and says, no, everything's okay. You're fine. You're safe. Everything's okay. Which in the initial moments is not where our mind goes to, right? Our mind goes anywhere else, but I'm safe. It's all good, right? It's like, so we almost have to like pause, take a moment and like get our bodies to remember you're going to be okay. Nothing to worry. Return to like whatever it was that you were doing. you're fine. And so breath work is something that I use personally. I share with all of my clients because it ends up being the thing that they can give themselves, right? Like something as simple as, I call it the breathing box. It is the breathing that essentially mimics the inhale being around 4 seconds. You decide how much capacity your lungs can hold. Pausing for 2 seconds and exhaling at 6. Pausing for 2, inhaling for 4, holding for 2, exhaling for 6. And for me, the breathing box, or just any sort of like rhythmic breathing like that, ends up helping clients to just regulate their system in a way that is also not like, many people get very self-conscious too when they get anxious, right? Because they're like, oh my God, everyone's looking at me. Oh my God, am I getting red? And it's like, ooh, that doesn't help, right? That does not help the moment when you're worrying about one thing and then you add another worry as to what are people thinking about me, or like, what are people witnessing? And so how many rectangles exist in our lives? Everything, right? You could even trace a rectangle on your leg if you're just wanting to like close your eyes, if that feels safe, or if you need to visually focus on something, and just to sort of even guide yourself through that breath work. A couple of deep belly breaths like that already does wonders. And so for anyone who's having moments of like anxiety in the early stages, when you're noticing, oh, I feel a little clammy, or oh, like I'm getting a little hot, or whatever the initial signs are that you know your body turns to signal, hey, you catching that? Like, are you going to do something about that? And you then sort of respond to it with the breath work, helps your system to find ease. And for many, that's like the greatest sense of relief that they could find in a moment like that.
Could you share some ways on how we can help other people, like loved ones, friends who are suffering really bad from anxiety, whether it be like work anxiety or regular anxiety? Like, what are some ways what can we say or what can we do to help somebody go through that?
Yeah. So I just want to give a shout out to all the people who have witnessed someone go through these moments, because the witnessing can often be just as painful as the experiencing of, because for many of us, it's like, oh my God, how do we help, right? What do we do? Oh my God, like our system almost gets anxious with someone else's anxiety. It's almost like a simultaneous activation, right? Because we as human beings do not like to and have a hard time tolerating any sort of suffering. So when we notice someone going through something difficult, we often want to rush in and help and do and fix and get that person out of whatever the emotional state, negative emotional state that they are in. And I would say, whether it's myself doing this with like friends or family members, or if I could share advice with someone else, it is to show up with a sense of like curiosity before they can give it to themselves. In other words, right? I would, if you came to me and you're like, oh my God, and you shared what is consuming you, what is filling your mind, what you're feeling anxious of, I would do something along the lines of, okay, tell me more. Almost like help that person almost ground in this belief that you want to know more, that you want to know all the details about what they are going through, and essentially give that person space and time to just divulge everything that's swirling around in their mind and to put it somewhere, right? There's like a beautiful image that sometimes will go through Instagram and like certain posts of just like the therapeutic world, where it will have someone sitting at a table and there's a huge thought cloud swirling above them. And you can just tell, like, from their face that they're consumed with all this stuff going on. And then
I think it was an image of me.
and then you have another image that has a book in front, and the swirling cloud is over the book. So that is journaling, right? Journaling is often a way that you could, like, give yourself a place where you can put all of your thoughts and worries that allows you to find a sense of calm, but be that book for someone else. In other words, allow someone else the ability to put what they are worrying about, what is stressing them out, and let them sort of give it to you to hold, even just for a little bit. And then perhaps help that person to get curious around, what do we think it's like about? Like, so what if you didn't get the job? Like, play a little bit of the what if game, which, depending on the moment, can really stoke anxiety, because then it's like, ooh, but we're talking about the real thing that could be. But most of the time, it results in leaving you at a place where you're like, oh, so yeah, like, worst case would be, but even if that were to happen, well, I could do this, or then we'll figure that out, right? It's like, it allows a person to just, like, find their grounding again, because anxiety often, I will say, like, it levitates us. It has us sort of feeling like we're floating, but, like, not in the blissful sense, like in the panicked sense of, like, and we have to, like, find our center. And at times it's hard to give that to ourselves. It's not impossible, right? We can learn techniques to do it, like we talked about, but to give that to someone else and to almost help someone through that journey when they can't give it to themselves is, from where I sit, like, the best way that you can show up for someone else.
Thank you. Yeah, the one thing I like to do when I'm speaking with somebody, like, I let them vent, and then, like, the first question after they vent, I say, okay, is this something you can control? The situation being. And usually when I ask that, they're like, no, and they calm down, like, quite fast. So they realize, okay, well, this is nothing I can control, so why am I letting it grip? And I do that with myself as well. Every time I have, like, anxious, like, I fight it, and then I say, okay, is this something I can control? No. I thank that emotion and I move on.
So, I love that you just said that you thank it, because sort of the intent behind our anxious parts showing up are to protect us, right? There's a kind intentionality behind them, even though they might have questionable ways of of getting us there. But they really just want the best for us, right? And so, yeah, like, when we are feeling anxious about whatever it may be, there's a good reason why. Oftentimes, we just have to slow down enough with ourselves to have us reflect on it, or we need someone to help us slow down and for them to be in that moment with us to then find that. But there's a story, and it makes complete sense somewhere, I promise you. Yeah.
Thank you. I really like how, like, I feel like I love how you're turning anxiety from a negative into a positive. Like, I'm seeing it in a more positive light. Like, it's here to help me.
Exactly.
Like,
yes.
I love that.
Yes.
So I guess, as one final question I do have, what's the one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Ooh, what will I give? What piece of advice do I give my younger self? I would say, be kinder to myself. Yeah. Like, I have my own critical part that does its very best to, like, protect me and to help me strive for things. And yet I wish that I had more compassion and kindness for myself and my journey and all I've accomplished and all I've been through and all I've learned. It's like, yeah, because it's gotten me to where I am today. And I don't often send it enough gratitude. So yeah, I think that's
awesome. Thank you. Well, this was
Yeah.
really amazing. Like, thank you. Like, I really feel like I'm looking at anxiety in such a more positive way, honestly. And I hope this
That's
helps listeners and viewers who
same.
suffer
Yeah.
from anxiety, you know. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thanks
Thank you
for
for
having me.
listening.